You'll soon be cutting less and quilting more. Hello, I'm Deborah Rubles, live in Lebanon, Missouri. I'm the author of the Quilter's Cutting Guide, the Sliding Ruler Method. If you follow the techniques and instructions in this book, you'll soon be cutting less and quilting more. Today's cutting snippet is going to be about cutting out 1 1/2 inch strips for an inner border for a project I'm working on. So I have my fabric prepared, it's been pressed, it's been folded, and I have one of the things I recommend in my book in chapter 1 is that for each color of fabric, you actually write out the cutting instructions for that particular piece of fabric, and then you pin it to that fabric. So when you bring it to the cutting mat, you are bringing one piece of fabric with the cutting instructions for that piece of fabric. So that way you're not confusing yourself, getting mixed up, and reading other instructions. So I already have my instructions written out in a post-it and pinned. And then what I recommend is that when you take the post-it off, you stick it under the edge of your cutting mat so that you can see it and it won't blow away when you're lifting your rulers and everything. Now my fabric is folded in half. That's part of preparing your fabric for cutting. It's folded in half like it comes off the bolt, and then I fold it in half again. And it's been pressed, and when you place it on your cutting mat, you place it so that the fold of the fabric is at your belly. So here, the first thing I have to do is square it. And I square with the 2 ruler method, and that's in chapter 2 of my book. And you may also see a cutting snippet about how to square fabric with 2 rulers. So I have there's my straight edge. Now, this cutting instruction says for me to cut 8 1 1/2 inch strips is going to be for an inner border for a Quilt of Valor quilt that I'm working on. So I have to cut 8 1 1/2 inch strip. This is where you pick up your cutting tool, aka a cutting book, the Quilter's Cutting Guide, and you go to the 1 inch tab, and then you keep turning till you get to the 1 1/2 inch page. Here, you open it up to the page you need. You'd put it at the top of your cutting mat where you can see it. Now, what we need is, I'm looking again, 8 1 1/2 inch strips. This first column is the number of strips, and there are full color instructions in chapter 2, chapter 3 as far as how to use this chart and how to cut the strips, but I'm actually going to show it to you today. So we need 8 strips. So you go across and it says cut on 12 inches. And what that means to you is that you find the 12-inch measurement mark on your big ruler, and you line up the 12 on that straight edge that you just cut. So I'm lining up the 12, and also at the same time I'm lining up one of the dark lines, the 1 or the 2-inch measurement mark at the bottom of the ruler on that fold. So then I have my 2 points for my straight cut, and then you cut. And then all you do is you simply go down the chart. So the next number is 10 1/2. You slide, that's why I call it the sliding ruler method. You slide the ruler over and you put the 10 1/2 inch on that straight edge. You're also watching to make sure that dark line is still in the fold, and then you cut. Next number is 9. Slide the ruler over to the 9 and cut. Next number is 7 1/2. Slide the ruler over, 7 1/2. Next number is 6. Going down the chart and you cut. Next number is our 4 1/2. I'm sliding it over. I'm watching the bottom and you cut. Next number is 3, going down the chart, cut, and the last numbers are 1 1/2 inch. So I have just cut my 8 strips needed for my inner border, and probably the time that many of you may still be squaring up your fabric and cutting the first strip. If you follow the instructions in the book, this technique takes about half the time of cutting out fabrics. So that's your cutting snippet today from Deborah Rubles, author of the Quilter's Cutting Guide. You can purchase this book at www.quilterscuttingguide.com. Thank you.